Hello and welcome to the Haaretz Podcast. I'm Alison Kaplan-Summer in Tel Aviv. On November 6, Haaretz held its first conference ever in Germany. Under the banner, Fault Lines and Futures, Israel, Gaza and Germany in Wartime and After. Countries across the Western world are rethinking their relationships to Israel in the aftermath of the Gaza war and the ongoing situation there. But in Germany, these conversations are especially complex and charged given the special historical relationship, the shadow of the history of the Holocaust, and how Germany relates to the Jewish people. The Haaretz conference brought together leaders, activists, cultural figures to confront the shifting relationship between Germany and Israel, to wrestle with the issues of war and peace, and to talk about how Germany could use its clout to help lead Israelis and Palestinians to a diplomatic solution. On this podcast, we are sharing highlights from these conversations.
I'm Esther Solomon, Editor-in-Chief of Haaretz English. Around the world, the fight is on to preserve critical and independent media. Haaretz, Israel's oldest newspaper, upholds its long tradition of accurate, committed, and incisive journalism, refusing to bend its reporting to pressure from any government or leader. A digital subscription to Haaretz gives you up-to-the-minute news and analysis in English from journalists who live Israel's reality and are committed to covering the Middle East and its global repercussions. At the same time, your subscription supports the cause of a free press that holds the powerful to account in Israel and around the world. I invite you to become a subscriber to Haaretz now. Just go to Haaretz.com and use the code Haaretz10, that's Haaretz with the number 10, for 10% off an annual subscription.
We begin as the conference opened, and some of Haaretz's partners in the conference confronted the challenges of even holding such an event in Germany at this time. Matthias Pies, director of the Berliner Festspiel, addressed the issue of cultural boycotts of Israel head-on.
With new perspectives and voices, but also with familiar faces, events like today's conference keep such spaces for discussion open, continue them and deepen them. At a time when dialogue and cultural exchange are often under pressure, as are spaces for social negotiation and for the artistic demonstration of possibilities, at such a time, we at Berliner Festspiele insist on the willingness to listen to and approach one another, and we see this as the basis for our coexistence and our future viability as humanity. We therefore reject the political boycott of artists and scientists of any origin unconditionally, and we also live this attitude in our curatorial and institutional practice.
Pies's sentiments were echoed and expanded on by John Philipp Albrecht, president of the Heinrich Böll Foundation, a German partner in the Haaretz conference. The Heinrich Böll Foundation maintains close ties to the German Green Party and encourages civil society involvement in politics, promoting democracy and international understanding.
As Heinrich Böll Foundation, we see ourselves as a platform for debate that brings different actors together, initiating dialogue on a small scale, for example, via our partner organizations in Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, and Ramallah, and on a large scale, for example, at international summits or conferences just like today. I'm delighted that we are opening up the doors for conversation and debate here in Berlin about political developments in Israel, Palestine, their people, and the region. A mature discussion between intellectual leaders, experts, and people who fought for peace and dialogue for a long time already. Everyone here starts from the basis of universal human rights and dignity for all people. This has to be the guiding principle for any future perspective. Since Hamas massacre on October 7th, 2023, and the start of the Gaza war, such fact-based debates with an openness to hear and consider each other's arguments have become rare. Too often, the extreme positions on both sides have dominated the discourse. Too often, those arguing for a differentiated look at the situation and for real talk with each other have been attacked and intimidated. When I hear that the Netanyahu government obviously is trying to frame us, a German democratic political foundation, which steadily stands clearly for the solidarity with Israel, to frame us as a threat for Israel, because we are not getting tired of bringing people together to find solutions for peaceful and safe coexistence of Israelis and Palestinians. When I hear this, I can only say this is an absurd view of the world. Alienating friends and partners of Israel is a strange strategy to strengthen Israel's security. At the same time, I read the news about German Die Linke youth wing having a debate on their positioning on Israel. Reports were that members who were arguing against framing the State of Israel as a mere colonial, racist project have been offended and threatened. Aside of the, in my view, wrong delegitimization of the State of Israel by absurd history policies, I cannot see how silencing the other side can be any way to achieve a peaceful society at all. We have to be ready to listen again, to sincerely listen and talk to each other, rather than judging about each other. This is exactly what today's conference is about, ladies and gentlemen. Even though there is now a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip and all living hostages have been released, we are still very far from political solutions to the end of the war and the larger conflict between Israelis and Palestinians. No one in Israel and Palestine is safe in the long term without a political settlement of the conflict based on two states that exist side by side in self-determination, security and peace. We do not believe in Netanyahu's conflict management paradigm. The international community, and especially the European governments, must remain committed to enabling and, if necessary, pushing for continuous work with political leaders and civil society actors from the region to find sustainable solutions in line with international law. At the same time, it is important to strengthen those actors within Israel and Palestine who are committed to democracy, human rights and peace. The Netanyahu government is marginalizing critical perspectives from civil society and the media. This also affects our partner organization, Haaretz. And there is still the proposal to intervene in our work as political foundations from Germany by imposing oppressive taxes on our contributions to partners in Israel and Palestine. The German government will have to clearly address these unacceptable policies as they are, in fact, threats to Israel as we know it.
In one of the most impassioned speeches of the conference, member of Knesset Ayman Odeh, who leads the Hadash faction, took on the issue of Germany's history and how that relates to its relationship to the Gaza war. Odeh did not hold back on a direct challenge for Germany to join many of its European neighbors in recognizing a Palestinian state.
In 2018, the late Professor Zeev Sternhell, a Holocaust survivor, wrote an article in Haaretz about the rise of fascism in Israel. He warned that what was emerging was not just a form of Israeli fascism. It was a kind of racism that reminded him of the early days of Nazism. He pointed to the nation-state law, recently passed at the time, as only the beginning. Sternhell explained that, like any ideology, German racism evolved over time. At first, it targeted only the human and civic rights of Jews. He suggested that without the outbreak of the Second World War, the so-called Jewish problem might have resulted in the voluntary immigration of Jews from German-controlled territories. Even back then, he wrote that some people on the political right might have imagined a similar fate for the Palestinians. I remember visiting Professor Sternhell that very night after the article was published. I will never forget that visit. We spoke about the achievements of Arab citizens in universities, hospitals, and in the high-tech sector. He led me to his library and showed me a book under the title, The Jews in Germany. In this introduction, I read that in 1930, Jews were just 0.5% of Berlin's population, yet 30% of its doctors. They held leadership positions in hospitals, universities, and banks. And yet, we all know what came a decade later. He asked me, did that make a difference for them? His words were chilling. I remember Professor Sternhell saying, in an undemocratic environment, even the professional and economic success of a minority can make it more exposed, more attacked, and more persecuted. He looked me in the eye and asked, was success enough on its own? The answer he worded is no. A minority cannot survive on individual achievement alone. Not in a democratic environment that denies rights and equality. That is why a minority must be part of the struggle for democracy itself. Because without a strong, vibrant democracy, one that protects every citizen, every community, history will repeat itself. Now, let us speak honestly about reality. There will be no more managing the conflict. As Netanyahu long promised, it is clear that annihilation cannot bring security and occupation cannot bring peace. The Palestinian people's basic needs and aspirations have not vanished. They are now at the center of global debate in universities and on streets worldwide, from Berlin to New York, Rome, Paris, Amsterdam, and London. Everywhere, Palestine has become a central issue. After 2 years of genocidal campaign, the world's sympathy has shifted toward the Palestinian people. Nearly 90% of the world's countries now recognize the state of Palestine, including the United Kingdom and France, except for Germany. By the way, that was my only request to the United States when Donald Trump came last month to address the Knesset. So I ask you to, Germany, recognize Palestine. Yes, recognize Palestine. Recognize that there are two peoples. There are two peoples in our shared homeland, both with the right to self-determination. The Israeli government isolates itself further by refusing to see what the whole world sees. There can be no future built on supremacy, only on equality, and this is the only path forward.
Dr. Ofer Waldman, who runs the Heinrich Böll Foundation office in Tel Aviv, moved the conversation to political debates inside Germany over its relationship to Israel and the Palestinians. Waldman passionately made the case against those who argue that Germans fighting for Palestinian rights under the umbrella of international law are somehow betraying their solidarity with Israel and the Jewish people.
In order to understand something about its past and present, Germany has to engage in a discussion about Israel and with Israel. Because if you want to understand, for instance, the beautiful first chapter of the German constitution, Die Würde des Menschen ist unantastbar, the dignity of human being is untouchable, you have to go back to the German Jewish history. And that's the thing, and I absolutely agree with Meron that this is an unprecedented and unacceptable diversion that we see today in German politics. Because there are two, in a way, bluntly put, two lessons learned from this shared past, producing these shared values. One is the solidarity with the Jewish people, hence with the state of Israel. But the second one, which is as strong as a pillar of the modern German state, is the commitment to humanitarian law, to the international law. And there are forces within, as Meron put it, within the German political sphere these days, who try to say it's either or. It's either you're pro-Israeli, you're on the side of Israel, or you support international law. This is absurd, because as was put by many speakers before us, the only way Israel has a prosperous future is alongside an independent, democratic Palestinian state. Full stop. And then Israel will be in compliance with international law. So basically it goes hand in hand. Expressing solidarity with Israel, with the Jewish people, and being committed to international law. And whoever states otherwise here in Germany has a hidden political agenda. We can have a whole different conference about that. But it's unacceptable, this either or, entweder oder. It's either the international law or it's being in solidarity with Israel. Not at all. It goes hand in hand.
Next to Dr. Waldman on the conference stage was Professor Meron Mendel, director of Frankfurt's Anne Frank Center. He continued the conversation about German politics, which was moderated by Haaretz English editor-in-chief Esther Solomon. Mendel pointed to the country's far-right political parties, notably the AfD, Alternative for Germany Party. That's the extremist National Populist Party, which is growing in power and in recent years has drawn closer to the current Israeli government.
Relatively lately phenomenon in the German politics to see that the most philo-Semitic pro-Jews, or at least pro-Israel party in the German parliament, it's the AfD, the right extremist, right radical, right populist. There are different definitions. They made, for example, a special session in the Bundestag for fighting against antisemitism, and they invited, he already died, but they invited then the Rafi Eitan. He was one of the most important Israel intelligence people. He caught Eichmann, for example. And Rafi Eitan told them, you shouldn't be just alternative for Germany, you have to be alternative for Europe, because you are so hard-lined against Muslims, against migration. And we talked before about this alliance between right extremists in Israel and right extremists in Europe, between Netanyahu and Orban and the right extremists in the United States in this way. So there, of course, the AfD are for Jews, not because they love Jews, they hate Jews, but they hate more the Muslims than they hate the Jews. So they said, we are for Israel because, first of all, the Jews won't be here, they will go to Israel. And secondly, we can marginalize the Muslims, we can stop migration, we can discriminate Muslims, and for the good cause. The good cause is fighting antisemitism.
On a panel devoted to the challenged special relationship between Israel and Germany in the shadow of the Gaza war, Maya Soiref, executive director of the New Israel Fund's Germany office, addressed the challenges facing progressive organizations in Germany. The New Israel Fund is a leading provider of grants to Israeli groups who are working towards a more just, equal, and democratic society. Soiref was asked by the panel's moderator, Haaretz journalist Judy Maltz, about the state of its partnerships with German progressive organizations in the shadow of the war.
I'll firstly start by saying that the relations have broken in all the wrong places. I don't think breaking off youth exchange, that excluding queer organizations, feminist organizations from Israel is the right way forward. It's not helping anyone. Secondly, I will say that we talk about the special relationship a lot. We don't say what that actually means. We don't have an honest conversation about that. There are many people in Germany who, for all the right reasons, feel very attached to Israel. Of course, for Jewish people like myself, who have family there, it's supposed to be a safe place. It was a safe place for my family for a long time. And then for many Germans, of course, they feel responsibility, or they've spent some time there, living there, working there, studying there. And so after October 7th, of course, we've followed in horror the events. We've been on daily calls with our family and friends as rockets from Iran were raining down, and we followed very closely and supported the pledge of the hostage families in their campaigns to bring their loved ones home. But at the same time, many people have been struggling to really square this support with their commitment to liberal values, to progressive values, and to human rights. And this is not something, of course, that's new, but especially after 7th of October, in light of the horrific suffering in Gaza that's been mentioned before, the escalating violence in the occupied West Bank, the brazenly dehumanizing, even genocidal rhetoric from parts of the Israeli leadership, is something that has made, I think, a lot of people questioning what does it actually mean to be pro-Israel in times like this. And I think this is the discussion we need to have. Also because, I've been told before by figures who are engaged in German-Israeli relations very prominently that what I'm doing is not acceptable to the pro-Israel camp. And I said, who defines that, actually? Not because I care about labels that much, but because I think it's actually quite an audacity. NIF has been doing the work that it's been doing for 40 years in order to support democratic civil society, and we're happy to see so many of our grantees and partners on stage and also here in the conference today. We are doing this kind of work because we want to see Israel as a democratic, safe, peaceful state, and we think the only way to do that is to support civil society organizations who've been out in the street protesting, who've been defending human rights in the West Bank, who have been gathering humanitarian aid trucks and protecting them from the attacks of settlers that were going to be delivered to Gaza. This is the kind of organization that I support when I'm saying that I'm in support with Israel and with the civil society. And this is the conversation I would like to see. And I suspect that many more people are feeling the same way. And you're very welcome to join us on this very long road.
Also speaking on the panel with Soyref was Zachariah Meisner, a Palestinian German educator and dialogue facilitator who shared his experiences talking about the Israel-Gaza conflict in classrooms in Germany.
One of the hardest situations for me was a context where a young person said, why wouldn't the Palestinians use violence? They're being murdered either slowly or quickly, so why not even the odds? And of course, we have amazing organizations like Parent Circle, Third Narrative standing together, and you can approach them with an emotional approach. But on the other side, we have a government that still sends weapons that didn't. We had the Sumut flotilla. I still wonder why there were no German boats by the government using the special relationship we have to Israel, saying, oh, no, we will give you weapons, but we also want human rights for Palestinians, and we will force you to either let in baby food and doctors and medicine, or you have to shoot at German ships. But this is the deal, maybe with German weapons. I don't care. But there's an alternative. And a lot of young people don't understand that, and it's becoming harder and harder after October 7th to give positive outlooks, to give positive examples, and to give them a worldview where they say, oh, I can identify with that. So if I think about the topic genocide, so I think Germany is the country where it's hardest to speak on the word of genocide, whether we use it or not. Germany has committed at least two genocides in its history. We have to be better talking about these topics and issues. We have different standards. If we are a democracy, we have to have a standard where with these hard conversations, because I understand genocide for a lot of people is a thing that really, really, really means something. But by not being able to talk about it, we make everything worse. And I can feel that every day in school, every day when I think about myself. I've never felt as Palestinian as I do now and as little German as I do now. And I think we're creating problems for generations to come. And this is only talking about Germany. It's not even talking about the situation in Palestine and Israel. So, we have to have a change, and a very strict one, or a very concrete one.
The conference wrapped up by discussing the thorny issue addressed at its opening, the difficult question of using cultural venues, which included countries whose leaders the conveners may feel are violating human rights and international law, or, alternatively, standing up for their beliefs through boycotting those countries. The final panel was entitled Curating in the Israeli-Palestinian Conflict, and it was moderated by Haaretz journalist Niv Hadass. It was Israeli filmmaker Nadav Lapid who made the case for boycotts, even when those boycotts are currently being aimed at him.
Nadav, I must address the next question to you because it reminds me something that you said that was quite controversial during your Q&A with Ari Folman in the Jerusalem Film Festival. And you said that had you been a foreign director and not an Israeli director, you're not sure that you would have screened your film in the Jerusalem Film Festival.
2 days ago, the sales company which is selling my film in the world asked me about the film festival in Russia. And after hesitation, I asked them not to send the film to this film festival. Yeah, but the same claps, you should clap film directors who don't send their film to Israel, to Jerusalem Film Festival. And another, short story, like in the beginning of the Russian-Ukraine war, I got an invitation from a big film festival in Russia run by people whom I know in person, whom I met. One of them organized for me in retrospective in Moscow, so I know them very well. And they asked me to come to St. Petersburg to get a kind of award for cinematic achievement. And, and I hesitated a bit and I told them, I'm sorry, I can't come. I can't come because... And they told me what Israelis are saying. They told me, but we are the good Russian. You don't understand, we are the good Russian. The problem is Putin. Like people here saying the problem is Netanyahu, as if Netanyahu invented Netanyahu. The Israelis invented Netanyahu. I think that the normalization of Israel... for years, I think the word Germany, in the first rank, is normalizing an unnormal place. It's normalizing a place an occupying place, one of the longest occupation of our time, is accepting something that cannot be accepted.
Naturally because of its past.
Yeah, naturally because of its past. And I always have, if I would have had like 1 minute in the elevator of the hotel with the Chancellor of Germany, I would have told him that I think that especially if he or other German care about Israel or suffer from historical remorse, which they should suffer, of course, the worst thing that they can do is to enable Israel this impunity. It enables Israeli society, and I think that the distinction between Israeli government and Israeli society regarding what happened in Gaza and also in general is so artificial and so false. But I haven't seen any meaningful struggle. There was a fierce struggle in Israeli society about the hostages, huge manifestation. Fierce struggle against the corruption of Netanyahu, with important army people, pilots who withdraw from the army. The same pilots were burning Gaza 1 year later. The biggest shame, I think, of Israel is not what the bad Israelis did, but what the good Israelis didn't do. And they didn't do anything important and anything meaningful to stop the war. And still now, I don't think that in Israeli society there is any sign of awareness. I don't think, that Israelis, I generalize, of course, think that what happened in Gaza is horrible.
But do you think that you're the one who's supposed to take the heat? The one who's supposed to suffer?
I think that before that Israeli artists, including myself, I'm meeting this boycott on a daily basis with my new film. But before Israeli artists complain about the boycott, I think that we, Israeli artists, we should ask ourselves, what have we done during these 2 years? What have we done? To which extent Israeli artists were active in a struggle to stop this horror, this genocide? To which extent, I want to give a simple example as a filmmaker. The Israeli news, the TV channels, took a totally perverse decision not to broadcast what's happening in Gaza. And this has created this surrealistic reality where the only people who didn't know, who didn't see the horror in Gaza were the people who was executing this horror. Now, we Israeli filmmakers, our tool is the audiovisual. It was our obligation to try to shatter, this denial, to use this tool in order to create an audiovisual alternative. We haven't done it. I mean, we failed. We totally failed, like other sectors, like this whole society, which totally failed in this historical moment. I think that Israel should be sanctioned exactly like Russia is sanctioned, for instance. And I think that we saw in this war that from within, Israeli society today doesn't have the tools to repair itself. The only thing that can help is the external pressure. If I think that boycott on arts is justified or not, it's a big question, but I think, that this idea that we have sometimes Israeli artists, that we should do nothing and keep on living exactly the same, as if nothing happened, is a total perversion.
The rebuttal, making an argument against Lapid and against boycotts, came from a German, Katja Lucker, a leading figure in Germany's cultural and music scene who currently serves as managing director of Initiative Music, the German government's central funding body for popular music and jazz.
May I just ask a question? Because we are in a house of art. Yeah. This is a house where people are coming together also from all over the world. And I think the big question is it naive to think, and I'm not an Israeli woman, I'm a German woman. I was born in Germany. But isn't it naive to say that we try to see both sides, that we try to bring people together, that we want to have talks like these, that we still want to invite artists from Israel, and that we want to talk together about this? Because I don't get the point. We have to go out then, and there was a yesterday, and there is a today, and there will be a tomorrow. And what will be tomorrow? Because what was going on in Germany, for example, coming from the music scene or coming from the club scene, talking about the Nova Festival, where so many people died, that was so horrible. And it's still a question why all these people from the club scene in Berlin and Germany was so brutal, silent during this time. Because isn't it possible to say or to see that we have empathy with all the victims, and that we still want to come together and have maybe a naive dialogue, but still, what else do we have at the end?
And with that final question, we complete this taste of the discussions that took place at the Haaretz Berlin conference. There was, of course, much, much, much more to hear about over the course of the day-long event. And if you want to hear it all, there's a link to the full YouTube video of the conference in the podcast show notes. This wraps up our special episode of the Haaretz Podcast dedicated to the Berlin conference. Thanks so much to producer Dan Brumer and editor Nara Malkin. If you want to continue to listen to our podcast and never miss an episode, subscribe to us on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And please leave us a 5-star rating if you're so inclined, and that way more people can find us. And to keep up with all the latest news on Israel, the Middle East, and the Jewish world, don't forget to subscribe to and follow Haaretz.com. I'm Alison Kaplan-Summer, and until next time, shalom from Tel Aviv.